just so that the audience have an idea of what we'll be discussing over the next couple of days, we've got 5 pretty detailed panel sessions that are going to be covering off various aspects, really, of how digitization and technology broadly is impacting PE in terms of data analytics, in terms of the investor relations role, in terms of investment opportunities in technology. So we do have one investment focused session. And also with the first panel that we'll be kicking off with today, really kind of setting the scene and really setting the expectations for the event, really with discussing future trends in how technology may shape the private equity space over the next decade. So we're going to start big, and hopefully it'll set the tone for the coming 2 days, and no pressure on our speakers for that. Speaking of which, we have got an absolutely wonderful lineup of speakers. They span the UK, Europe, the East Coast of the US, and the West Coast of the US, and also Florida. So we have got a really wide-ranging set of speakers. My hope, really, for the audience is that you find the perspicacity and the sharp insights of our panelists not only germane, but also a way to promote maybe further discussion and ideas among your respective organizations. That's my hope for this event over the next 2 days, and we really want to encourage everybody listening in to really take some practical insights from this event and really start to think about how they may apply to their respective firms. So that's really what this is all about. It's a safe environment for everyone to share their thoughts and network, and really come together at a time when we still can't meet everybody in person. So we'll hopefully do our best to make this as intimate and human as possible. I would say that I'm quite envious of those that are dialing in from sunnier locales. It's around about -5 here in my location in the UK. It's bitterly cold. I'm running out of hand cream for my cracked hands. So I just hope that I don't have a brain freeze over the next 2 days. So that's all I can hope for. Now, without further ado, we're just about approaching the hour, and we'll be ready to kick off with panel 1. So panel 1 will be discussing future trends in PE technology. As I say, this should be a tremendous way to kick off the event, and we've got a great lineup of speakers. I will now introduce each of them accordingly and invite them to present themselves, hopefully in human form on the screen. I'll kick off with the moderator for today's session, and that's Ron Biscardi. Ron is the CEO of iConnections, who I'm sure some of the audience have heard of. So Ron, I'll invite you to join.
Great. Hi, James. Thanks for having me.
Good to see you, Ron. Our first speaker for today is Sophie Flack. Sophie is the CSR and Digital Managing Partner and a member of the Executive Committee at Eurazeo. A pleasure to see you today, Sophie. Thank you for joining.
Everybody.
Also joining, we have Eric Feldman. Eric is the CIO at Riverside Company, and really great to have Eric on board.
Thank you. Hi, everyone.
Joining Eric and Sophie, we have Jed Gardner. Jed is SVP at Linedata Technology Services in London, a very well-established technology group. Pleasure to see you today, Jed.
Thanks, James. Great to see everyone.
And rounding off the panel, we have Jamie Smith. Jamie is the Director of International Technology at Ez Castle Integration. And Jamie, pleasure to see you.
Hi, everyone.
Okay, well, without further ado, I will hand the virtual floor to Ron, and very much looking forward to this session. So Ron, over to you.
Great. Thank you, James. And I just want to say thank you to PEW for hosting us and putting on a great event. PEW events I always find to be really informative and well organized. So thank you for having us. And panelists, it's good to see all of you. Thanks for joining us today. As we get started to talk about future trends here in PE, and as I was thinking about this panel last night, something that struck me was that when I first sort of moved into the investment world in the late 90s, there was, of course, it was the midst of the dot-com boom, and technology was all the rage. But I remember thinking frequently that venture firms and private equity firms were often run like very small businesses. And rarely did I encounter a firm that used technology at the core of their business. So I think fast forward to today, all these years later, and it's obviously very, very different. So I'm excited to hear about what all of you are seeing in the marketplace and are doing with your businesses in the way of technology. So we're going to split the session today into two parts. I want to talk first about the digitization of your businesses at the GP level, and then we'll talk about it at the portfolio level. So if we can just start with the sort of a discussion around what are you guys just broadly doing to digitize your businesses? So in the running of your PE businesses. So we'll direct this one to Eric and Sophie. So Eric, if you'd like to start, just at a high level, can you give us a sense as to what you're doing at Riverside that is different from sort of the old days of the PE world? I think we all see PE as an industry that has probably, as much as it's been investing in technology, hasn't always been quick to adopt it. So what are you doing at Riverside that you think is sort of innovative and different in that regard?
Yeah, thanks, Ron. Appreciate the opportunity to be here today to talk about some of these challenges. I'd say there's a couple of areas that we're looking at. First of all, I think that most everyone would agree that we are awash with information, and we have data that's scattered over dozens of systems. So traditionally, you would have data sitting in on-premise infrastructure, but today I would imagine that most everyone has data sitting in some sort of cloud service, be it a software as a service platform, infrastructure as a service. You have third parties that you have relationships with, and they're processing and storing data for you. So one of the things that Riverside has been doing over the last few years is just trying to get a sense of where is all this information, because it's hard to ask informed decisions or informed questions, sorry, about your data if you don't know where it is. Over the last year or so, we have really found a very interesting, I don't know, thesis, if you will, about the connections that Riversiders have, particularly their third-party networks. So Riverside's a global firm. We have offices in Europe and the United States, across Asia. A deal team in our Munich office isn't necessarily going to know the relationships that one of our investment professionals has out of our Dallas office. So we use a platform. It's called Office 365. I would imagine many of you out there are using an email platform similar to that. It's a treasure trove of data. You wouldn't necessarily think about it that way. You have your calendar invites, clearly all the meetings, notes, and then just the communications you have with people inside of your organization, outside of your organization. So one of the things that we're trying to do is to connect the dots in a smarter way. And using the metadata within Office 365, what we're trying to do is measure meaningful relationships. So what's a meaningful relationship? So if I communicate with someone at a certain frequency, there's a fairly decent chance that that's somebody that I have a connection with. And so the idea behind this is anyone could go into this platform that we're slowly but surely building. And let's say I'm looking at a company in Omaha, Nebraska. I would be able to see who across Riverside may have a connection to that CEO, to that CFO, maybe a board director. Again, for us, particularly in the investments we make on the lower end of the middle market, getting access to that level of information can be the difference between winning a deal and quite frankly, not even being in the running. So that's a big area. And again, it's a commodity platform. I think when people think AI and big data, they're not thinking about their email platform. So Ron, that's an example right out of the gate of one area that I'm hopeful is going to be very fruitful for Riverside.
Interesting. Just taking an existing platform that, of course, millions of people are using and just going deeper with it and really trying to maximize its value.
Yeah, exactly. Exactly.
Sophie, any thoughts as to what you're doing over at Eurazeo?
Yes, well, of course, like Eric and Riverside at Eurazeo, just for the audience, Eurazeo is a diversified investment company, and we have average 20 billions of assets under management, and we do private equity, private debt, private fund. So we have 3 pillars in our digital strategy, and I differentiate digital from IT. Of course, IT would be more all the back office legacy tools that you have, you know, to operate your finance, your HR, your emails, and so on. Digital is more going to be the advanced technologies that you can use. And we are working on what we call augmenting our processes. And in order to augment our process, we work in 3 main fields. One is how can we augment all our insight through data and inside investment process. The second is how can we leverage powerful existing tools to enhance, to augment our investment processes. So, you know, to enhance detection, to enhance pipe monitoring, to enhance provision accuracy. And the third area where we are augmenting our processes is towards our portfolio, where we launched a digital platform. Of course, our vision of working with our portfolio is not only through digital, but in the current time, it's proven useful, you know, to have a digital platform. And this digital platform is really for us in order to share tools, best practice, in order to accelerate business development for our portfolio. It's also a place where they can connect to each other and do some direct business development. So it's really becoming part of our, I would say, the add-ons the Eurazeo platform is bringing to its portfolio. So really data, investment processes, augmentation, and connectivity for the portfolio. That would be the 3 pillars on which we are working through digitization.
So Jamie, let's turn to you for a second. Are you at Escastle? Of course, you guys have a really significant market share in the private fund universe. Yeah. We encounter you all the time, especially in the hedge fund world. But I know you play in private equity as well. Are you finding clients are coming to you looking for help to do some of the things that Eric and Sophie have talked about? Are they trying to take these systems that have been in place for a long time that they probably maybe didn't even know that they could extract this kind of information out of? Are you getting questions like that from clients, and are those projects becoming more commonplace?
Absolutely, yeah. I think digitalization in general is kind of moving on now with the current cycle of IT moving away from on-premise environments like Eric spoke to at the start into these as-a-service realms. And I think it's really important that people kind of look at how to modernize processes as well as applications. Because I think we've always had data. It's always been around. It's always been the focal point of investment decisions and risk. I think what we have now, though, is so much more powerful because it's available to everybody. You know, back in the day, you know, the front office guys had spreadsheets, Excel, when they were modeling data on, you know, spreadsheets which grew and grew with links everywhere. It's just got kind of really crazily hard to support and to kind of use. Whereas we're finding now out of university and college, people coming with the Python programming skills that they kind of use today, and we just give them access to the data sources, and they kind of know what they're doing, know what they're looking for, can go and do it straight away. So the level of experience that's coming up from the users is huge, and I think people are embracing that and just really kind of looking at how to stabilize a platform, how to secure them, and how to pick the right tools to enable people to really kind of excelling to, exploit what's available today. The second part to that from data is the user enablement. So making sure that we pick applications and services that people can use cognitively and just understand how to use them and really kind of accelerate that. So the biggest thing we've seen aside from data is user enablement. And I think a lot more people are maybe having sponsors internally. So they're going out and hiring heads of user experience to kind of come in and really champion these ideas and make sure that another favorite word of mine, that the core of the business is looked after, not just the contextual systems that we used to provide before. And that's definitely accelerating this digitalization and moving everybody forward.
Jed, any thoughts on that one?
Yeah, I mean, I think if you look at big data and AI, it's important to remember that depending on where you are in your digitization life cycle, or even the growth of your business, you have access to analytics through the use of managed services. And one key thing that we've seen as a trend that's been growing, and as Eric has pointed out, is that private equity firms, big and small, are looking at their portfolio companies, looking at the way that their portfolio companies are using technology, and trying to assess whether the ways they're using technology can apply to them, but also using the technologies that they're finding in the portfolio companies to try and develop analytics about how healthy and in what risk position the portfolio company really is in, not necessarily just relying on the information that's coming back from the senior management team. And I think that needs to be balanced with a risk-averse approach, where understanding that not every technology and the way that technology is being used in portfolio companies is the right way to go, but looking at how it applies to your private equity business and how you can draw that in.
So one of the things that comes to mind for me as I think about developing this expertise, when I think about the primary skill sets, the investment skill sets that typically reside in a private equity shop, it really has nothing to do with a lot of what we're talking about here today. They may be good at identifying these in portfolio companies, but actually implementing the technologies and running them and then rolling all that up into an investment committee process and decision making is really new and very different. So Sophie, I'm curious, how has that been handled inside of your firm? How do you take what is an MBA skill set, an investment skill set, people who come with that finance background, and incorporate this new approach or these new tools in a way that everyone sort of understands? Have you found it challenging at all at the investment committee level as decisions are actually being made?
Well, it is definitely a very good question. Well, the good news is that in our industry, people have a mathematical a mind, which is good with quants, with data, and with quantitative approach. So I would say that we are probably in a quite friendly environment, or at least an environment at least we can grow seeds. The issue, and maybe I'm going to take concrete examples, because concrete examples speaks more than long stories. At Eurazeo now, for the last 5 years, all our due diligence are enhanced with data analytics. So we do a lot of web scraping, outside-in verifications. So to translate it in a more friendly manner, when we are looking at a target, we are going to scrap any possible available data on the target, on the competition. That's how we are going to identify potential buildups. That's how we are going to identify potential risk, also potential additional opportunities. You should know that now we can scrap retailers' websites. So when we scrap retailers' websites for B2C companies, we can compare the data they're showing on sales, on marketing, with real data, real ratings. So this has brought an entire new way of assessing targets. Right now, the way we work is that we have our data team with data specialists. So they are in dialogue with the investment team. So the investment team comes, express its needs, saying, I'm looking at these targets. And we ask them, okay, what do you need to verify? Do you have a stone in your shoes that you need to unlock, et cetera, et cetera. And we gather data. The problem is that often it's difficult to make sense with data. When you look at financial data, you have benchmark. You even have mental benchmark. So you know if it's good or if it's not good, if it's average, and you can compare to the industry average or to peer average. When you are in this precision marketing data, when you are in these big data assessments, you have no benchmark. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that you always need to keep in mind that the web is a chunk of the reality, but it is not the entire world. We still have a large part of the world, a large part of consumer behavior that is going to be outside web. So it's difficult to exert, to place, I would say, a judgment. So what we are doing is that we are building our own internal benchmark database so that we're going to make sure that, you know, we can make the data speak. And also we are training the teams. So we are training them about all the data analytics possibilities that they have. And we're also training them building the message. And to go back to your question, how do we do it? We try to be very much, I would say, very practical. So we really ask them, as I said, what is your stone in your shoe? What do you need to unlock? And by proving that we can unlock some insights, you know, you create interest. Then, of course, you know, the investment teams are always afraid that, you know, some data might jeopardize the understanding of a target. So we try to keep it as scientific as possible, you know, and also we've identified in the various teams some people who are more data savvy, who are more tech savvy. And you would be surprised, it's not an age issue. It's really more a mindset, you know, being open to innovation, being open to new tools, and we build from there. And as a matter of fact, I would say 5 years from now, outside in analytics, where, you know, for the more geekiest members of our teams, now it has become fully generalized to all our B2C deals. And even the investment committee now ask, I don't have the data analytics. They have understood that reading the data, making sense with the data needs to be handled with caution, but they ask to see it, you know. And so, but it has taken 5 years to get there. And now we're tackling more the B2B aspect of it, which is not as easy, but we're working on super cool functionalities. So I'm sure the teams, you know, are going to love it. So we need to create love about the work we produce.
So Eric, are you it's really interesting what Sophie just said about you know, building these skill sets in these other areas, and that it really is a shift in mindset. You know, like you have to sort of come to the table embracing these new tools and developing an understanding of how to use them. At Riverside, as you're recruiting investment professionals, are you thinking about that now? Is it something that, are you looking for folks who come to the table with the finance background, but also with a leaning in this direction so that they can make the best use of these tools?
Yeah, I'm not necessarily in a position to speak about how our internal HR, you know, functions work. I'm not close to it, but I can tell you a little bit about my experience working with our investment professionals, which I think will ultimately answer your question, Ron. I've definitely seen in the last 18 months a major change in the number of our funds. So Riverside has 9 fund families. In our fund families that make equity controlled investments, I would say the majority of them are doing several things. The first is on the diligence side, we've seen an uptick in interest, very similar to what Sophie was talking about. But my particular example is around sentiment analysis. And so what that means is there's a whole bunch of chatter out there on Twitter, on Reddit, and lots of other sites. And so when we're looking at an investment, instead of somebody, a junior team member, spending time going through and logging into each of these and trying to find little nuggets of information, there are a suite of tools that are available that will aggregate all this information, and using AI sort of pop things out in a much more faster and efficient way. It's an example of a partnership, if you will, between the needs of the investment professionals to work smarter and more efficiently, and then members of my team partnering with them. Across the board, I would say again, some of our newer investment professionals, those kinds of tools are super important. The other thing that we focused on, and it's a little bit about portfolio companies, so maybe we won't go in too deep, but there is a increased desire and need to have access to more information that is contained within the walls of our portfolio companies. So we're working on projects to start pulling data out in a secure way so that the investment professionals and operating teams can start doing an analysis. The other thing that we're really focused on is, again, just going back to my earlier comment on analyzing the tool sets that are currently in place and how do you maximize those investments. So in regards to our global CRM, which is used by our deal origination team, as well as investment professionals, we've built just smarter workflows. So more things can be automated within that, as opposed to siloed IT working in a spreadsheet, working in a Word document, and that stuff gets lost. Really trying to push as much information so that search engine within our CRM is more practical, it's more usable, and quite frankly, it has more access to information. And so that workflow, again, it's driven by needs and desires that we hear from the investment professionals. My last point is myself and members of my team, we work very hard across our global footprint to build relationships. I know we talked about this in our prep meeting, but the relationships across our 100 or so investment professionals, that's how we're able to glean what those needs are. It sounds like, maybe Sophie's structure is constructed in a way where it's just a natural connection between that digital side of the business and the investment team. At Riverside, it's growing, and it's really it's a true partnership across our subscriptions, where we have tons of information that we pay for across the internet, such as the sentiment analysis. We're seeing an organic need to be smarter, to create a closer working relationship between the technology/digital function as well as our investment professionals. So Ron, to go back to your first question, I for sure am seeing that the technical skill sets of the investment professionals has accelerated. Most of them today are doing their analysis using tools such as Tableau, whereas like a couple of years ago, they were just number crunching in Excel, and it's not sustainable. So having the skill sets and maybe not out of the gate, but the willingness and the aptitude to learn, for sure, most of these people have.
But
Well,
go
ahead, Sophie.
Because I completely share what you're saying, Eric. It's a process, and you need to build, I would say, step by step, the cooperation with the investment teams. It's like any innovation, anything new. Even if you see an interest, we know that, especially in our line of business, time is of the essence, workload is super huge, so we're just adding an element to it. Maybe, and that's something for the audience, the reason why I believe it works at Eurazeo is because we always start from a point which is, what is your problem? How can I help you fix a problem? How can I help you get an insight where you do have a question? So it's always very much solution-oriented, problem-fixing oriented. And if we find some other cool stuff that we can add to the table, we're going to bring it. But it's always express your problem, express your need, we're going to build from that. And that's how, we create a cooperation with the team, because they see us as a value added, and we're going to save them some time. We're going to increase the quality of their assessments, and they don't see us as like, oh no, oh my God, it's going to create troubles. And I think this is super important. Really, the starting point is the investment team.
I agree. And my last maybe comment on that is, for everyone in the audience here, technology folks shouldn't be doing anything in a silo. To Sophie's point, and to my earlier comment, it's really getting into the weeds with the investment professionals. One of the things that we are actively doing now is, it's sort of like a day in the life of an investment professional. We're literally meeting with them, sitting with them, if you will, talking about an entire deal life cycle. And then we get to that point, well, where's that pain point? And then it's our job to partner with them to think about what do we have existing? Where can we automate? And what tools are available to help them do their job smarter, faster, and better?
So this is probably a good point to shift to discussing the portfolio level activity and what you're looking for in your portfolio companies and how you're engaging the portfolio companies around these issues. So I know in our prep call, we talked a lot about the importance of every business having a digital strategy and building out a digital strategy, and to some degree, your involvement in helping portfolio companies do that. So Eric, do you want to take that one? Because I know you had some really good input on our prep call around this issue. How are you working with portfolio companies around their digital strategy?
Yeah. So as I mentioned earlier, we invest in fairly small businesses. And so where we start, Ron, is for many of our businesses, it's just at the very basic level. To Sophie's earlier point, there's sort of a difference between traditional tech and the digital side. In a lot of cases, we're just trying to get the foundation stabilized and make sure that they have the right tools so that information is stored in a useful way so that can be used for more advanced analytics. So in many cases, we're investing in businesses that don't, let's say, have a mature accounting system. They're using like a QuickBooks Online or something akin to that. But so we're looking at ERP implementation. We're working with them on better understanding what systems they have, why they have that. One of the things that me and members of my team have really designed over the last year or so, due diligence, we closed the deal. We've created now, we call it the Technology Advisory Office within Riverside. It's a seamless handoff between that diligence work that was done, and then it's parked in my team. It goes back to what I was talking about earlier with the partnership with our investment professionals. Well, we also create partnerships with our nearly 100 plus technology leaders because we want to hear from them. So we have the diligence report. That's sort of a good perspective from the outside. But we meet with them, members of my team. We meet with every business that we close on, and we hear from them directly. How does this diligence resonate with you? Where are the real pain points? Riverside has built some pretty sophisticated sales excellence functions, so we're partnering with those teams as well. That's a big area of focus, is evaluating and sort of building up that sales function. So the sales ops side of the Riverside portfolio is super important. So making sure that when companies are making investments in CRM, in accounting, making sure that they have really thought through, well, what are the integration points? Like, where do we generate invoices from? That CPQ function. Should that be from the CRM or should that be from the accounting platform? So we work very closely to sort of think through a lot of those strategies. Maybe the last point here, Ron, in terms of partnership, is I certainly am not responsible for this, but Riverside has this concept called Riverside University. And the whole idea behind that is to get all of the leadership teams together. It's either through webinars, and it's we do a yearly conference called the Riverside Leadership Summit. In my realm, I hold a yearly conference with all of the technology leaders. And so we bring in great outside speakers. And I've learned over the last few months that a number of our CTOs through these connections have broken off, and they sort of have their own working group. And so they're brainstorming, they're sharing. We actually bring CTOs in to host webinars for our portfolio companies. So there's a ton of exciting opportunity for somebody like myself, because these companies differ in sophistication. We start at the very basics. We build a strong foundation. We partner with the operating teams to understand what it is reporting needs are, if there's any compliance need, and then how to scale from an integration perspective, because we're doing a ton of add-ons for many of these businesses. So being able to integrate future tuck-ins is a big responsibility for the technology leaders of these companies.
And Eric, I think that's great. I can give you the view from the managed services side, is from what we're seeing. I mean, obviously, because we we don't see it from just the inside of one private equity company, right? We see it from the outside. We're working with a lot of private equity businesses, and what we've seen as a trend over the last 18 months is the integration of the private equity firms into the portfolio companies, and we're finding that that is driving kind of the byway learning which you were just talking about, but it really opens their eyes, I think, private equity companies, to the risks that you can carry with portfolio companies as you take them on as investments. One of the businesses that we've been working with is a distressed lending specialist, and they take on businesses that are having a particularly difficult time, and typically when they take them on, what you see is that they have a lot of technical debt built up because they haven't necessarily invested in the IT, because they've had cash flow issues. They're really struggling to find where to put the money, and IT tends to be the last place that they put it. And so where we come in is that we are brought in to assist to not only help the portfolio company to move out of the situation they're in with their technology and digitize, bring in automation, bring in some analytics that assist to make them more streamlined as a business, more efficient from a financial position. But we're also looking at how we can integrate them with the private equity parent. And as I said earlier, that's not just looking at every technology they have and just going, well, we're just going to use it because they're making use of it. Typically, where they're in different markets and different sectors, that technology has a different use, and so you have to intelligently try to apply that back to the private equity company. But also, we see a lot of concern around cybersecurity, which is a big concern when you bring those businesses on. And I'm sure, Eric, you pay a lot of attention to that as part of the due diligence process. Is what gaps do they have? And what we do find is that even if you're looking at regulated private equity companies, hedge funds, which the financial services companies, whichever portfolio sector you end up walking into, you can apply the same kind of cybersecurity practices across the technology and address it. And what we find is that if we apply the private equity regulated approach to cybersecurity to the portfolio companies, even if they don't need it, they're getting the best practices of cybersecurity as they improve with their technology and digitization.
But if I may, on cybersecurity, I must say that on due diligence, we are super pragmatic at Eurazeo, and as a matter of fact, what you can see in terms of cyber security during due diligence is quite limited, unless you would do some unfriendly sniffing around, which you don't want to do definitely during due diligence. So as a matter of fact, we use scoring tools in order to assess the OPEX and CAPEX, but we keep it really light because I would say when we really dig deep on due diligence, it's more when we invest in tech companies and we want to understand the quality of the technological asset, its scalability, and the ability also to recruit talent on the market. And we start the real work post-acquisition. And that's where we can really, and we have an approach where we, it's tailor-made related to the maturity and the level of risk of each target. And of course, as you can imagine, we very much apply that to ourselves because we are targets. We are targets of choice. And we know that, the crime has become digital as well. They've enhanced their skills in digital. So it has become, more and more, it requires more and more skills to be able to face those risks. Then maybe to complement what Eric has shared on IT, and of course, it very much depends on the size of the companies in which you're invested. We do not take the same approach for digitization. IT is IT, and you need, of course, to build the foundational systems. As a philosophy, and that's something I would definitely recommend to the audience, we usually refuse any own development. We go for the market packages. I mean, accounting is accounting. Prospection is prospection, and especially in small companies, you still have, some IT guys who is going to say, no market package is going to do the work. I need to develop it myself. Definitely, that's a no way. It's a no-go. Then, of course, it's going to depend on our investment share, but usually I am very much adverse to any self-development unless it is, unique tech asset.
Yeah.
Going
Sorry.
digital, what we do, and I believe it's super important, is we work with management team. Often it starts even a due diligence process, and we identify, based on their strategic digital vision, we identify projects, small chunks of projects. And we are going to, so, you know, because you may have a vision, long-term vision, mid-term vision, how do you create chunks of actionable, swallowable projects? And then we do what we call MVPs, minimum viable project. Often in tech, people are going to look for the tech. We look for the business benefits. So we are really going to do some quick and dirty development to validate the concept. Are we going to attract customers? Are we going to generate new revenues? And tech is going to be half tech in the front office, you know, the wallpaper, and below you're going to have humans, you know, pedaling for the back office. We need no automation. We need no big data, whatever. We prove that business-wise, the concept is valid and is, you know, catching an interest from customers. And if yes, then we start building the tech. And it's really, I mean, you know, if you discuss with people in the digital area, and I see you, Jetro, saying yes, and I know we, with Rick and with Jamie and Ron, we are aligned on this vision, but really you need to reverse it. Talking digital, talking technology is not about tech. It's first about a business need. It's first about a product, about a service. You need to demonstrate its value. Once you have demonstrated the value, you put the big money into the right tech. But a lot can be done, you know, with you know, a little bit of wires and a little bit of human powers, and really automatization comes second. And I believe that's super important. And we also have, you know, some small, mid-sized businesses in our portfolio, and it has proven to be super efficient to bring management teams, you know, who tells you, no, I have it all over the place, I have no time to do that, but still it's critical because you need to invest in digital, it's future growth. So, you know, those small projects delivering business value pretty fast, or you drop them super quickly, that's a very good way to work with the management team and make them, you know, embrace digital.
Yeah, I think to your point, just a couple of points to that is that one thing about analytics, don't go and just buy a data science team, right? If just have a plan, and if you need to use data scientists, make sure that the data scientists have a goal, right? They understand what they're trying to do. Data scientists will find data correlations and they'll just dig and dig and dig, and they'll pull out all of this information, and you won't have any use for it, right? You need to be really clear about your strategy. And another thing is, by second, take off the shelf first, right? So many off the shelf products nowadays.
Looks like the gremlins have attacked Jed's connection.
It looks like it. Well, actually, so this is a good moment. Jamie, I want to bring you into the conversation here. As you're working with private equity clients and their portfolio companies, how much of this are you hearing as you? I mean, of course, everyone is completely focused on cybersecurity, as we all have to be. But my sense is that the portfolio companies, probably in particular, are not always at the top of the game when it comes to cybersecurity. Can you speak to that at all? How involved, or how often are you being brought in by PE clients to help the portfolio companies with issues like cybersecurity?
Yeah, a lot. I mean, you know, protecting your investments is key for everybody, and I think making sure that they are doing the things you expect of them. Largely, I think the process starts with the DDQs, and I think before the investment kind of takes place, and what they do and what their strategy is, and then augment that with kind of your best practice where it doesn't maybe meet what it is you're trying to achieve. But I think the strategy for me is the most important thing with any of this, whether it's cyber, if it's data, anything you're looking to achieve. You need budgets, you need buy-in. I think so, making sure you've got a clear defined strategy for all of this, and that anything you bring in adds to that strategy, and it doesn't take you further away, because there's lots of great tech out there. I mean, a lot of PE now is invested in digital firms, anything with .io, domain name people are investing in. and it doesn't make it a great company to bring in and use, but it's a good investment. And so I think whatever you're doing, just make sure that there is a clear, concise strategy behind why you're going to bring something in, because you need to go back to get buy-in from stakeholders. And I think Sophie said this earlier about getting the quick win, finding something the business will see a benefit from straight away, and really kind of setting them that this is something they need to, that goes into the strategy that kind of works on them. And with the portfolio companies as well, making sure that you have that good kind of knowledge you can transfer. And Eric, I loved your university approach, kind of going in and making sure that you're kind of giving back to the stakeholders there and making sure that they, have the counsel of each other. Problem shared is a problem halved, I guess, and solutions they're finding for their businesses, because they all are at different levels and different stages. And I think that comes back to the strategy again, just making sure that you're sharing that, they're buying in and they're benefiting from it. Because there's so much stuff you could do, and we get excited about the latest and greatest technology, but it doesn't always fit. It doesn't always give us that advantage that we're kind of looking for. And I think that's key to making the decision to invest in a firm or invest in a technology. It's the same. Does it fit into your strategy? Does it add to what you're looking to do?
Yeah, the key really, sorry, Ron. I mean, the key is what problem are you trying to solve? And I think, clearly that, Sophie has really addressed that. And Jed, you're 100% right. Either hiring a team of data scientists or even buying 100 Tableau licenses with really no strategy. That itself is not a very good investment.
Jamie, have you seen from your side a change in the approach to private equity launches over the last 18 months? I mean, from our side, we're seeing a slightly different approach from the technology to cybersecurity. Which one's getting the focus?
Not really. I haven't seen too much in the last 18 months, thanks to COVID. But I think we see a change. We see a change in the approach, I guess, of how they're managing their investments. I think the data, because the data is kind of more available, we're seeing the cycle time of like reporting is a lot quicker. People are readjusting their expectations from their portfolios, I think, on a more macro basis. And we're owned by a PE firm as well, and we see that we have to kind of report back to them where we are performance-wise. Luckily for MSPs, I think it's been quite good during COVID, and this kind of explosion of what we're seeing today. But I certainly think that the ability for us to kind of do things a bit quicker is benefiting our portfolio.
One thing I would say is that we're seeing, especially private equity launches, focusing on cybersecurity as a primary focus before the technology. They tend to be a lot more risk averse. They want to understand how to meet regulatory requirements before technology is really discussed, and how we bring technology into those discussions. That's something that we've really seen, and we're seeing that in the hedge fund market as well.
Yeah, the hedge fund market is definitely a different beast when it comes to data. I think the data science and so a lot of the quant funds are really kind of jockeying and trying to appeal to the talent that's out there.
Yeah.
But I think for PE, it's probably less data scientists and more analytics. So I think the quality of data that PE have is more refined. It's more directed at what the use case is and what they need it for. Whereas I think with some of the quant funds and some of the hedge, it's more a case of just more data the better. Let's just just cram it all in there and see what we've got. It's not the case with PE. PE is certainly more refined. It's more adjusted, and I think there's a clearer picture of what it is they want to get from the data, which is, I think it's a more refined process. PE definitely wins that battle.
Yeah. So with our last few minutes of remaining time here, I want to touch on AI. I feel like you can't have a tech discussion these days without AI becoming a part of it at some point. And I'm curious as to how all of you are potentially using AI, if you are, and specifically in the risk management area where I feel like I've seen it referenced. So Eric, you want to start on that one? Are you guys dabbling in AI, or are you using it in a significant way?
Yeah, I think some of my early examples, some of the technologies that we have rolled out leverage AI. I think my caution with this, and maybe Jed referenced this earlier, is there's just a lot of hype around that term. And so, what I'd like to think that what we're doing at Riverside is managing our data in ways that we had not been doing before. So areas that we're really focusing on are workflow and smarter and more intelligent integrations. And then what naturally is coming out of that are ways to leverage some technologies to help us make decisions simply in ways that we weren't able to do in the past. So it's sort of a half answer, I guess, Ron. Yes, we have some native platforms that have AI functionality built in, and we're using those. But we have not built out a massive infrastructure that is inherently driven with AI technologies. I think we're taking a very pragmatic approach. We're trying to leverage AI in systems that have it already baked in, as opposed to going with bespoke solutions. At least that's the path that we're doing today.
But the thing is, to go to your point, Eric, as a matter of fact, we are talking about our direct business as investor. We are a data poor industry. If you want to do AI, you need huge volumes. So, you know, and if, let's say detection, if you want to do some detection, if you want to use AI, you need, I mean, a quantity of data in order for your algorithm to be able to find some things that are going to be meaningful. This does not work with our industry because it's called private equity. It's called private equity for a very good reason. Data are private. So what you can do, it's very important, you know, because, and I share Eric's comment, everybody says AI, you know, it's kind of, but at the end of the day, what are we trying to do? And as a matter of fact, you might want to use some data analytics, you know, or some type of tools. For example, we use a lot of NLP, natural language processing, which is going to be super efficient on the type of data that we have in our industry. So for example, if you want to have a view of the market, you know, if you want to conduct some detection, yes, or RPA, I see Pierre-Yves comments, RPA can be super useful, definitely. So it's how you automate your processes with some robots. So for example, at Eurazeo, if you have subscriptions, and you guys are all going to know what I'm talking about, it's impossible to get a 360 view of all the deals going on the market with only one data subscription. So you need to subscribe to multiple data providers in order to be able to have a 360 view on all the deals happening in the industry or in the subsegment you're looking at. To create this view, you need to integrate all the data, and then you need to add some cool tools that are going to get you the right information. Do you call it AI? Do you call it something else? You know, I would say the words don't care. At the end of the day, can you get the right vision on your market? You can also do some super cool stuff on RPA, to go back to Pierre-Yves' comment. So for example, we have a company, we are the shareholder of a company that buys, well, that used to buy, because COVID period, thousands of plane tickets, because they are in the travel industry, you know, they're shifting, but, and so if you use RPA, you can really improve your buying cost. And we save hundreds of thousands of dollars, because, you know, we automated the search and comparison of the purchasing price we were having and the best purchasing price we could get on the market. And the guy we worked with was super smart. You know, he gamified the process for the purchaser. So, you know, they kind of had a ranking device with, you know, you get cool stamps, you get cool emojis, blah, blah, blah. And so we really, through RPA and leveraging data, we've been able to save really a lot of money in this purchasing process. So again, you know, you have various, when we say AI, it's a big word, and we need to take into account the type of data we have, the quantity of data we have, and based on that, we need to leverage the right tools in order to really gather actionable insight.
I think we need to. You need to split machine learning and AI up, right? I know AI. We need to really understand the concepts between the two. You know, machine learning is the analysis and presentation of information to make a decision. AI is being able to make the decision from the data, from the output, right? And so we have to be really careful. And I hear a lot, I talk to a lot of businesses and tech businesses who say, hey, we're doing AI, we're doing AI. Well, actually, no, you're doing machine learning, AI comes next, right? And I think the thing, you know, we've used machine learning with some of our clients to to predict breaks in trades with hedge funds, as an example, to give them a probability that when a trade is executed or just before it's executed, what's the chances based on historic information that it's going to be successful or not, and have to be pulled back. And that's been extremely successful. And I think that, you know, if I had any advice, I would definitely look at machine learning. RPA is definitely another place that I would go with it, but AI, I would definitely, you know, just be mindful of the fact that then you are really trying to make decisions, right, at that point, and you're trying to get something to make decisions for you.
Great. James, are we out of time?
I'm afraid so, Ron. It's been a fascinating discussion, but I'm afraid, yeah, we're out of time. I know that we could run on with this panel. It's been just a tremendous way to kick off this event. I think there's been just a vast array of great insights. I'm just looking at the comments that we're getting from the audience. I just would like to express my gratitude to all of you for speaking so candidly, and really appreciate your time on this. And Ron, thank you for expertly moderating.